They hanged her under twin suns, and the light made it beautiful. That's what the footage showed. The woman, Dr. Oralis Marouin, stood on the gallows platform with her chin lifted, hands bound behind her back, her white medical coat fluttering in the warm breeze of Oralis Prime. The imperial officer beside her read from a scroll in a bored tone, speaking the words of execution with bureaucratic detachment. No trial, no defense, just a charge, cultural contamination of a protected planetary population. She was the first of 12. The noose tightened around her throat, and she closed her eyes as if whispering a prayer. Above, the twin suns gleamed on her pale skin, and for a heartbeat, it almost looked like peace. Then, the trapdoor dropped. The footage lasted 9 minutes and 34 seconds. It went viral in 7 hours across EarthNet. Everyone watched it, and everyone remembered the moment they did. For Admiral Janice Rain, it was during a debriefing at Luna Command. He paused mid-sentence as his aide handed him a data slate, lips pressed tight. Rain tapped play, eyes narrowing. When the video ended, he rose from a table and simply said, "Clear the room." For President Sana Lin of the United Human Coalition, it arrived on her private terminal at 3:12 a.m. She watched the footage in silence, her face expressionless until the last body swung. Then, for the first time in 12 years, she poured herself a drink. For 17-year-old Kira Marouin, halfway across the galaxy in an orbital school above Europa, it arrived from an anonymous account. She watched her mother die on repeat for 6 hours. And when she stopped crying, she began planning something dark and very human. The Empire had made a mistake. They had forgotten what humanity truly was. Oralis Prime had been a peaceful colony, non-militarized, focused on xenobotany and medical outreach. Scientists, teachers, families. The settlers had been granted temporary cultural permissions to work with local alien populations, helping to curb disease and starvation. But the Empire never liked humanity's influence. Earth's compassion disrupted control. Education bred questions. And questions to a regime that fed on silence were a virus. So when Oralis Marouin and her colleagues helped a native village cure a plague the Empire had ignored for years, it was branded treason. An expedited cultural correction task force was deployed. The settlers were rounded up, their work labeled subversive. Public executions were staged to restore order. 12 women, 6 medics, 3 teachers, a botanist, a translator, 1 girl who had just turned 18. The message was clear: stay in your place. They should have remembered Earth's history. They should have known what happens when you make martyrs out of mothers. They should have studied what humanity does when its dead are dishonored. The morning after the executions, Earth did not send envoys. It sent silence. Not diplomatic silence, total silence. No transmissions. No trade relays. No presence in Imperial Senate sessions. Humanity simply turned off the lights. A week passed. Then a single packet was transmitted across the Galactic beacon hub, encrypted, untraceable, received by every Imperial listening post and political center in known space. It read, "You thought we would mourn quietly. You thought wrong. We are the children of fire. We will teach you why you fear the dark." No signature, no demands, just a promise. And the countdown had already begun. When a predator goes still, it is not peace. It is the breath before the lunge. The Galactic Empire mistook Earth's silence for submission. They thought they'd broken the humans. They believed, as empires often do, that fear was the final word. But on Earth, in its orbitals, on its moons and hidden rings and deep black ships, something old stirred. Something not born in the stars, but dragged screaming from the mud and blood of ancient Earth. It wasn't anger. It was resolve. The United Human Coalition's emergency chamber beneath the Arctic ice shelf was filled with the kind of quiet that scared generals. President Sana Lin stood alone in the center of the war table, a matte black slab of obsidian ringed with glowing constellation markers. Her advisors sat in a wide circle around her, watching as she stared into the pulsing holomap above. No one spoke until she did. Operation Sundown is approved, Lynn said softly, her voice like a scalpel. The time for diplomacy is over. Prepare the fleet. Murmurs rippled. A few military officials blinked, surprised. One finally asked, "Madam President, what about the Senate?" She turned to him, eyes hard. "They'll catch up." The vote hadn't been unanimous. Some still believed in petitions, in peace talks, in old, rusted treaties signed back when humans still thought the Empire could be reasoned with. But those treaties had hanged beside Elise Marin's broken body. Admiral Janice Rain stood aboard the Vindicator, deep within the Kuiper expanse. The Vindicator was not a showpiece. It was a ghost ship, cloaked by quantum distortion arrays, a weapon built not to defend humanity, but to end threats to it. Rain had once hoped he'd never need to wake the fleet. Now he toured its decks personally, armor sealed, voice echoing through cavernous hangar bays as soldiers trained in synchronized silence. The humans here were not conscripts. They were not young. They were not naive. They were chosen. Veterans of colony skirmishes. Survivors of the Sirius Uprising. Cybernetically enhanced tacticians. Genetic warbreeds grown in Europa vats and taught poetry before war. "Sir," a lieutenant called. "We've received the confirmation from EarthNet." Rain nodded once. "Deploy formation Theta 5. Begin blackout protocol. If the Empire asks where we are, let the stars answer for us." Across the stars, on stations, hidden moons, and within asteroid cities, humans did not mourn. They prepared. Cargo routes were quietly rerouted. Weapon caches activated. Civilian transports vanished into classified vectors. Entire orbital academies emptied. Students shipped to parts unknown. And through every layer of human society, from government to merchant, soldier to scientist, passed a phrase that needed no explanation. "We will not forgive. We will not forget. Not this time." The Empire, meanwhile, watched the silence with increasing discomfort. On the planet Terravon, an Imperial news anchor read the official line to a galaxy already bored of the human drama. Human settlers illegally modified native biogenetics, violating interstellar cultural preservation acts. Their punishment was swift, legal, and final. The anchor's eyes did not match the confidence in his voice. He had seen the footage, too. On the capital world of Veridon, High Executor Kale Sarix convened with his ministers. "Earth has not responded," one said nervously. "Not a word in 13 days. "They're sulking," Kale snapped. "Let them. They're soft. Sentimental." A silence settled. Someone coughed. Someone else murmured. They were silent before Jupiter. And again before the Kara Rift. Another minister added. And they were silent before New Damascus. Right before they erased it in one night. Kale waved it off. A show. Nothing more. He was wrong. Humanity wasn't posturing. It was preparing. In hidden databanks, names were collected. Those responsible for the executions, those who signed the orders, those who watched and said nothing. They weren't just building a fleet. They were building a list. And on that list, one phrase was etched beside every name, marked for reckoning. 16 days after the Oralis executions, EarthNet lit up for the first time. Not with a declaration, not with a broadcast, with a single image. 12 stars arranged in a circle. A woman's silhouette at the center, head unbowed. And beneath it, one line of text, burned in white across a field of black. "We are still watching. We are not done." The galaxy laughed nervously. The Empire scoffed. But in the back alleys of conquered worlds, in the bunkers of freedom cells, in the quiet minds of oppressed species across the galaxy, something began to stir. Hope in human shape. The first Imperial outpost died in silence. No alarms. No distress call. No heroic last stand. Just a flicker on a star map. Then, nothing. Outpost 637K, located on the mineral-rich moon of Valvalos, was a key refueling station, heavily defended and strategically vital. It had served the Empire for 112 years. It lasted 6 minutes against the humans. Admiral Janice Rain stood on the bridge of the Vindicator, watching the tactical readout like a conductor poised over a symphony. The orbital strike had begun without fanfare, just precise kinetic rounds falling at hypersonic speeds, guided by dark AI arrays designed for annihilation. He didn't blink as the first wave landed. "Report," he said. 3 rail strikes. Planetary shield failed in 4.7 seconds. 0 survivors confirmed. Facility vaporized, replied his second-in-command, Lieutenant Reese. Rain nodded. "Next target. Outpost 618J. 2 light cruisers in orbit. 1 ground garrison." Rain didn't speak. He simply raised his hand and made a small motion with his fingers, like brushing dust off a coat. The Vindicator shifted, engines humming like a predator exhaling. It wasn't a war. It was a cleansing. Earth didn't deploy its full navy. It didn't declare war with pomp and banners. It sent the Ghost Fleet, vessels humanity had built in the dark, forged with the knowledge that one day the stars might betray them. They bore no flags, no emblems, just matte black hulls and silent payloads of death. And as the campaign spread, each strike was the same: swift, brutal, clinical. No civilian casualties. No cities razed. Only military outposts, garrisons, and the command centers directly tied to Oralis. Each one vanished like dry leaves in a firestorm. Across the Empire, panic replaced confidence. The footage began leaking after the 4th strike. It showed a squad of human operatives moving through a storm-drenched Imperial relay tower. The visuals were grainy, captured from a shattered helmet cam, but what the galaxy saw was unmistakable. Tactical armor, human insignia, precision that bordered on terrifying. One soldier, voice low, calm, was heard marking targets as they moved. "Captain Marouin, targets neutralized. Upload complete. Clean extraction in 47 seconds. Captain Marouin." Kira, her face turned toward the camera just before the feed cut. Eyes like burning coals. Her mother's name stitched across her chest plate. The Empire didn't issue a statement. What could they say? The daughter of a murdered medic was now raising command hubs across 3 systems. In the Galactic Senate, chaos reigned. Ambassadors from neutral systems demanded to know if Earth had declared war. They hadn't. No official statement. No ambassador. No press release. Only the aftermath: glassed bunkers, vanished fleets, and black banners left behind, each one painted with 12 stars and a single phrase in a dozen alien tongues. Justice is not requested. It is delivered. On the bridge of the Vindicator, Rain reviewed his next target. It was personal. Execution Commander Velt Erix had signed the order for the hangings on Oralis. He had called the condemned women contaminants in a recorded speech. Now he was stationed on the orbital palace of Hecker's Fall, an artificial ring world with both military command and private luxury quarters. Untouchable, or so he believed. Rain cracked his knuckles as the targeting display locked in. Status: orbital cloak active. He thinks we're debris. Rain smiled. Let's correct his perception. Moments later, Hecker's Fall was split in half by a surgical antimatter lance. No fire, no explosion, just a white-hot line and then collapse. The ring cracked like glass, spinning into itself as alarms blared too late. Commander Velt Erix was never found. By the time the Empire understood what was happening, 7 of its strategic installations were gone. Entire regional command networks severed. Fear gripped even its core worlds. Because they knew something now, something cold and final. Humanity wasn't retaliating. Humanity was punishing. And it had only just begun. The Empire had always believed it could not bleed. Now, it was drowning in its own. At first, they thought the humans were simply angry, that the strikes would taper off, that Earth would posture, rage, then return to the negotiation table like it always had before. But this time, Earth had sent no diplomats. Only names, only targets, only justice. And justice was relentless. On the imperial capital world of Veridon, the High Throne Council met behind sealed walls. Outside, Protests surged through the silver-plated plazas, alien civilians, imperial citizens, even military families demanding answers. Inside, those same answers turned to ash. The list keeps growing, Grand Strategist Marek hissed, slamming a data slate onto the Obsidian Council table. 17 outposts, 9 command centers, 3 high-ranking officials, gone. Gone, someone scoffed. Humans don't have that kind of reach. They do now, Marek snapped. And we gave it to them. We executed their civilians on live feed. We painted ourselves as gods and forgot what mortals can become when you murder their saints. The Empress, Elira IV, sat silent atop the floating throne. Her eyes were rimmed red, not with sorrow, but with sleepless fury. They are terrorists, she whispered. No, Your Grace, Marek said coldly. They are executioners. In the outer systems, panic turned into rebellion. On Shalvex 9, where humans had once helped terraform the acidic atmosphere into farmland, the native fresh burned the imperial flags and hoisted up banners with 12 stars arranged in a circle. On the mining world of Draxus, an alien worker recorded a message that spread like wildfire across galactic networks. We were told humans were fragile, that they clung to compassion like a crutch. But we watched them burn empires for it. We will follow them into the dark. The myth of humanity began to outpace the fact. Children on conquered worlds whispered of the Ghost Fleet, ships that moved faster than light and struck without warning, of operatives with glowing red eyes and hearts that beat with thunder, of a girl who had watched her mother hang and now carved her name into the hearts of tyrants. Kira Marouin had become a symbol, not of war, of reckoning. In the ruins of every site humanity struck, they left nothing behind but the same symbol, the 12 stars, and a phrase now etched into galactic history. You killed peace. We came for the cost. Even inside the Empire's own military, loyalty cracked. Captain R.Y.L. Lawson of the Second Fleet disobeyed orders when commanded to fire on a humanitarian ship suspected of human aid. He transmitted his resignation publicly, stating, I signed up to serve the Empire, not to become the villain in someone else's legend. He vanished 2 days later. Rumors said the humans picked him up. Others began disappearing too. Intelligence officers, field captains, alien allies who'd grown disillusioned. Vanishing without a trace. Some believed they were dead. Others believed they had changed sides. In the Senate, where voices once echoed with arrogance, fear now choked the air. How many more must die before we speak with Earth? One alien senator shouted. Speak, another spat. You want to negotiate with the people who turned moons into craters. We executed their civilians, a quiet voice said. Wouldn't you return the favor if it were yours? The chamber fell into silence. And still, no message came from Earth. No treaty. No terms. Only another transmission, hijacked from a central broadcast node and streamed across every imperial world. It showed 12 names, 12 faces. The women hanged on Oralis Prime. Their names were read aloud, not by a politician, not by a soldier, by their children, one by one. Then, a voice, calm, human, female. For every name you erased, we will write yours in fire. You will not go unremembered. You will not go unjudged. The Empire had conquered over 1,000 worlds in 2 centuries. In just 37 days, it had lost control of a quarter of them, without a single full-scale war. Because it hadn't faced an army. It had faced human memory. And memory, once weaponized, doesn't stop marching. Empires fear armies. But they should fear mothers more. Because armies need orders. Mothers need only memory. And humanity had 12 mothers burned into its soul. Names hanged under twin suns, replayed across every screen, engraved on the war banners of vengeance. The soldiers didn't just fight for revenge. They fought for Elise, for Rena, Talia, Mira, for women who healed the sick and taught the voiceless, and dared to bring kindness where the Empire brought silence. They didn't die quietly, and now, neither would anyone who ordered it. Captain Kira Marouin stood in the black belly of the infiltration ship Ghostlight, her fingers wrapped around the cold barrel of a rifle she designed herself. Her mother had saved thousands. Kira was balancing the scale. "We have confirmation," said Commander Vo Esike, handing her a data slate. "Target, Governor Tal Adrix, primary author of the Purity Edicts. Signed all 12 execution orders." Kira scanned the screen. "Where is he?" "Fortress World. Zentaur V class, 6 orbital defense grid. Population, Imperial families, military elite. No civilians." Kira's smile was a blade. Perfect. Zentaur V had never been touched by war. It was where the Empire sent its royalty to hide, its officers to retire, and its war criminals to vanish under new names and titles. But that night, the stars screamed. It began with a blackout. Then the orbital guns turned inward, hacked, reversed, firing into their own shields until they overheated and ruptured like cracked glass. Then came the drop pods. Sleek, black, silent. They hit the Capitol compound in a ring of steel rain, opening like iron blossoms. And from them stepped soldiers in silent armor, eyes glowing red through HUD filters, each one marked with a single, stenciled word across their chest. Daughter, son, nephew, widow, friend. Names lost on Oralis, reborn into fury. Kira's squad moved through the marble halls like a story retold in gunfire. Her rifle spoke in bursts, clean and final. She didn't shout commands. Her team didn't need them. They were family forged in grief. Every shot was memory. Every breach was ritual. By the time they reached the governor's vault suite, there were no guards left. Tal Adrix stood in a panic chamber of shimmering steel, pounding the fail-safe panel that no longer responded. His breath fogged in fear. His ceremonial uniform was stained with sweat. The door blew inward with a whisper, not a roar. Kira stepped through the smoke. Adrix looked up and finally recognized her. "Marouin," he gasped. "You're your mother. You remember her?" I was following orders." Kira raised her rifle, then paused. "No, you gave them." He opened his mouth to beg. She fired once. Then again. Then a third time for the youngest, barely 18, who'd been the last to hang. When it was over, she stepped back into the dark, left his body there, alone in the fortress that had never known fear. The operation was over in 2 hours. It would take the Empire 2 weeks to even confirm it had happened. Zentaur V's defense logs were erased. Its remaining leadership had vanished. Every broadcast tower across the sector received the same message, delivered in Kira's voice. "To those who hang the innocent, we will find you, not because of what you did, but because of who they were." And beneath that message, 12 names, spoken slowly, lovingly. No threats, no slogans, just memory, weaponized. The news reached Veridon in the middle of the night cycle. The Empress's silence was long. Her face turned to the palace window, where ships still orbited like fireflies in a jar. She whispered, "They killed Adrix." "No," said her advisor. "They unburied him." The next morning, dozens of imperial governors filed emergency resignations. Some fled into exile. Some vanished without a trace. Some tried to beg Earth for mercy. No one responded. The humans weren't interested in negotiation. They were still counting the dead, and their patience had run out. It didn't end with fire. It ended with silence. Because by then, there was no one left to scream. The Galactic Empire had ruled for 217 years. It fell in 45 days. Not to another empire. Not to alien fleets or interstellar plagues. But to memory. To justice sharpened like a blade. To 12 names whispered until they became a roar. The last strike came without warning, as they all had. Veridon, the heart of the Empire, had always been considered untouchable. Its planetary shield alone could withstand a solar flare. Its defense fleet was the most advanced in the known galaxy. None of it mattered. At 3:11 standard, every orbital satellite above Veridon flickered offline. A low hum, like the breath of some ancient thing, vibrated across the ionosphere. Then came the Ghost Fleet. Not in full. Just one ship. the Vindicator. It didn't fire weapons. It didn't send ground forces. It spoke. A voice broadcast on every frequency, every channel, every neural band. It was Kira Marouin. Not shouting. Not demanding. Just speaking. Calm. Steady. Final. We did not seek war. We sought dignity. And you answered us with nooses and silence. So we rewrote the question. On the ground, citizens of Veridon looked to the skies, not in fear, but awe. Because the humans weren't bombing cities. They were releasing records. Everything. The executions. The orders. The classified Imperial communications. The internal memos that called the women of Oralis acceptable losses. Truth poured from orbit like rain. Screens across the planet lit up with a real history, uncensored, unfiltered. The Empire's shame, delivered not as vengeance, but as clarity. Then, as the message ended, 12 shimmering lights descended through the clouds. Drones, each projecting a single name into the sky. 12 women, 12 symbols, 12 truths the Empire could never bury again. And then the Vindicator left. No shots fired. Because humanity had already won. 3 days later, the Empire surrendered, not with terms, but with a confession. The Empress abdicated. The High Council dissolved itself. Across the stars, systems seceded overnight. Planets raised new banners. Governments formed not in the name of dominance, but remembrance. And at the center of it all was a doctrine. Written not in blood, but in resolve. It wasn't law. It was warning. The final doctrine, Article 1. Let no empire believe peace is submission. Let no species confuse silence with surrender. Let the memory of the unjustly slain be the fire that guides us. Article 2. Justice delayed is not justice denied. It is merely postponed and sharpened. Article 3. The hanging of 12 healers cost an empire its throne. So weigh your actions well. The stars forget nothing. Kira Marouin disappeared shortly after. Some say she returned to Earth, vanished into civilian life. Others believe she walks the outer system still, watching for the next injustice. The soldiers of the Ghost Fleet dispersed. Some became senators, others teachers. Some simply farmers on forgotten moons. But their creed remained, and no empire has tested Earth since. Years later, in a classroom on a free world once ruled by the Empire, a child raised their hand. Who were the women of Oralis? The teacher, an old-freshed woman with silver eyes, smiled. They were proof, she said gently, that one life can matter, that kindness can be dangerous, that compassion, when killed, becomes something far more powerful. The class was quiet for a moment. Then the girl asked again, but who were they really? The teacher's smile deepened. They were mothers. They were rebels. They were the match. And humanity? The girl asked. The teacher looked to the stars beyond the window. They were the fire.